So I'm going to get now a brighter red, and I'm not going to make, see how glow, this is really a beautiful red. So the thing is, many of these colors, right, they were fugitive. They would run away. No, they would fade. They would fade. Fugitive would fade. So what happened is they just exposed to the light for too much. The sun will play a number of them, and then it will lose intensity. I think that these colors here are fairly well preserved because these were in books I think these were in the Kew Garden, so they were not exposed and framed. They were just kept in. They were scientific document basically. So I think the colors are fairly well preserved. But who knows, right? Maybe. So sometimes you see old watercolors. By old it means not that old. I mean probably made in the 40s, right? But that is sufficient. If they were framed, they're sufficient for some colors to fade. Alizarin Crimson is one such color, and this looks like a lot of either permanent rose, Alizarin Crimson, and some of these colors were very fugitive. And if some painting, for example, had been framed with part of it covered like this, right, and the part that was exposed, you realize how much is faded only when you remove the frame and you see that this part here is much brighter. That would be the case for colors such as Alizarin Crimson, right? And so when you buy Alizarin Crimson today, Winsor & Newton still offers the genuine Alizarin Crimson because it's a beautiful color. But I wouldn't buy it. I would buy the permanent version of Alizarin Crimson because it doesn't fade. It's a substitute, but it doesn't fade, right? So now I'm going back. I'm gonna leave this alone a little bit, right? I'm gonna leave this alone a little bit, and then I'm gonna back to this part in here and try to create now a little bit darker area. See this part in here is a little bit darker. There's more blue in there, right? And develop it, right? Develop it three-dimensionally with tiny little brush strokes, right? It's a little bit like a miniature, kind of one of those little miniature thing, right? Technique. Eventually we're gonna tackle the green in the back too, right? But gonna paint the other one too, right? So see how we kind of start. We started to get there. So there's a lot of preparation, right? There's a lot of preparation, but then if you create the turning of the form right, with the few important initial brush strokes, if you pick up the right color, then suddenly things come together quickly. But at the beginning, the preparation that has to require some planning, right? Need some planning. So now let's get to your question was saying the brush stroke, right? So see, in this case here, the brush stroke in here, they would go probably down like this, like that. Make sense? So let's try this. Because it helps to create this gradation from light to medium to dark, and it's different when you draw. You would draw differently, and when you paint differently. But with oil, right? With oil, you paint different. But in this case, in here, you want to go with the form, because what you need to do is this. You need to do this, right? So you need to do a value here, right? A value here like this, and then another value here like this, and then darker and darker value here. So the form turns like that. But when you draw instead, you want to go with across the form. So you will paint like this, but not here, because we have different colors, right? And it's small. So that's an important distinction. Thank you for asking that question. All right. So now let's get to that side of this, of the sepal, right? Now I'm gonna block in a color that is slightly darker than the base color they put down like this, and I can put it pretty much everywhere, right? And then here a little bit on the other side. This part in here is very dark, so I can block in this part in here very dark here like that, right? Without, because that way you don't have to layer a million layers, right? But I know that I can add color layer to refine it, so I'm not gonna push it to the darkest value, right? But again, I can get close to that, right? You know, George Catlin is something. I want to see if he did some watercolors, because his paintings of the Native Americans of the prairie are just fantastic. But I think he painted mostly in oil. I don't know if he did watercolors. You know, I saw years ago in Washington D.C. a show on the work by basically the Medici artists that were working for the Medici in the 1600, 1700. They were painting pretty much the same thing, but they were painting lemons and oranges. And as you know, the limonaia or orangerie was a symbol, status symbol, right? So the Medicis had these limonaia, this building bread just for collecting lemon trees, and it was a showing well, basically, because you needed a building just to host the trees that had to be protected in the winter, right? And they also this painting. There's some paintings that were showing all these type of lemons and oranges that they were collecting. They're lost now. A lot of these are gone. So I didn't know that this woman, did something similar with apples and other fruit, because that that's quite intriguing, because probably we can see apples that are not existent anymore, right? They're not used anymore, because most of the apples were used for cider. They were not good to eat. So see what I'm saying about the brush stroke, right? How you can control it, right? You can really control it like that, right? You can really control it like that. So of course you increase the value, right? Increase the value, but in some case you might want also to alter. For example, you could alter the temperature, you could alter the chroma by making the color as it gets darker, maybe gets like chroma. Meaning, if you have a viridian, you don't want to paint a thin layer of viridian, then do everything else in more and more concentrated viridian, because it's too monotonous, right? Maybe you want to add a little bit of blue in it, or a little bit of green, or a little bit of I don't know, red in it, just to lower the chroma and make it darker, right? So so then there are going to be a few spots here and there where we can really carve it out, right? But let's say we can use a I would use a, let me see, a burnt umber. No, is my pink here. I'm gonna use a sepia. Sepia is one of my favorite colors, but it's very useful, right? Very useful. So you make it with this green here, right? See that? And then that can get really dark in some spots here, right here, like that. Here, right? You just got here how you sharpen it, just a few lines, you sharpen it. But the important thing, you have this progression, right? The progression, because if you just put a line in there to create the contour, it will flatten the form terribly, right? Now I want to go back to the flower here, right? Let's see. To put more detail in there. You see what I was saying before, in here, in this area here, you need to leave, right, one thing here. There is a little bit of paint that escaped, right, and here, and I want to take it off if I can with clean water, and then you use a stiff brush, right, a stiff brush, which is synthetic, right, synthetic like this, and then you wash it, convince it to come off. So now, this part in here has a bluish violet color. See that here? So let's try to do that right here. Light, right? So I'm trying to get this this volume in here, right? This nice lights in here. A little bit, see, gradually, right? See that? One color, then two, and then three smaller, right? Big, medium, small. With three, basically with three kind of layers of this color here in different gradation, in different tonality, you can achieve a good sense of depth, right? Or turning of the form, right? But you can't imagine the thing that these guys saw, right? Kathleen or Bauer or Sibylla Marian going around and copying the word. You copy the word, you paint the word. You see the word really in depth, right? Because you had to spend time copying it. So really, you really look at it thoroughly, right? See how this little stamen here is really carved out with the outside color. It's the outside color that makes it stand out. It's not an outline, right? It's not an outline. So what you're trying to do, you're trying to block in this margin, this area here, color here, so that is not an outline, but an area color gradually increases and is sharp against the stamen, but it's soft as it moves away from it. And now we need to darken this, also this part in here with a little bit of violet, right? Blue, gray, violet. This needs to be reinforced a little bit here, right? Probably this could use another layer color. See that? Another bit slightly darker value here. How is this dry brush technique coming? You guys mastering it? You're figuring it out? With little tiny brush strokes?
Yes.
It takes a while, right? It takes a little while to figure it out. But one thing that you can also do is splay the brush too, like this. Splay the brush, right? And in some cases, you can do it with a splay brush like this, see that? And then do a tiny little brush stroke like that. And that will create a little bit of a textural effect, see that? See how neat it is, right? Textural effect. That is not super regular. But so here, for example, you could use that, right? Kind of create a little bit of a irregular effect. See that? With tiny little brush stroke. See that? So try that too. Take the brush, splay it, right? Splay it like this, and then this. Right now, there's not much painting. Right? Splay it like this. Of course, these brushes are not going to be happy because put a lot of stress on the brushes. But what are brushes for, right? We got stressed all the time, we don't complain, right? Why should brushes complain, right? So now we get, see this area here now is darker blue, right? Blue, violet, gray. Let's do that. But same thing, keep the margin next to the stamen sharp, but as you move away, you keep it soft, right? So here. So when you see that my brush quickly disappears from the screen, is because I'm rinsing it. I'm taking it to this, rinsing it off, then quickly drying it, and then spreading the paint, right? So then I turn the brush again. I'm turning the brush from a paint depositing tool to a paint lifting or paint moving tool, right? Without really having paint oozing out, but spread the paint that I have there, or soften it up, right? Soften it up. But I don't want other paint to be in the brush when I do that, right? I want to use the paint that is on the paper, right? So now we see those little freckles, right? Cute little freckles. Let's go for the freckles, right? I mean, that could be a little bit darker, right? Because you will see also the front of that. So we need to darken that before we do this. See this part in here? You really see the white sticking out, right? So we need to darken whatever's behind it. Again, I think it's a stamen, but I'm not sure. Right, so we want that to stick out, see that? But I don't want to have the outline like this, showing the white. I want the part around to be the value here and here and here, and not a line, right? Makes sense?
Yeah.
Because we're thinking color now, we're not thinking line anymore, so we gotta think a different way. Color, contrast, right?
Oh, sure. It's green.
Okay, so now probably here we could block in those little freckles, right? Maybe it's a little bit darker there, right here. Okay, so now darker blue, violet, gray, right? Blue, violet, gray. I don't want them to be too sharp, right? I want them to be soft as I see that, right? So let's see. Well, maybe that works, right? See here. So again, it's really important. Dilution is really important, right?
I love the statement.
All right, so I pushed a little bit dark. All right, makes sense? All right. Now I want to keep developing this flower here. So we would have somehow some sort of a sequence, right, where we see a little bit of the basic drawing here, and some of the pencil here, right? Some of the pencil, initial washes, and we can block in here, let's say here we can block in a couple intermediate washes, right? So this. All this part in here, probably could block it in darker right here. To give it, immediately gives a sense of depth, right? The depth. And but you notice the dilution, right? Dilution, see, it doesn't, I don't have a ton of painting here because you need to control how much paint I put in there, right? Now here I have this line here, this line here, right? And that line there. And then we can soften the passages so we can create a tonal gradation. Right, so we would have different stages here, different stages of construction of the paint or the flowers, right? Okay, so now here I want to, this is very flat, so I want to block in some values here, right here. Here. The slider, so here. I can also drop paint in here. Now this is wet on wet, see that, wet on wet. I drop paint in there, right? Right. So once you, but this needs to be softened, see that? This needs to be softened, so I need to go back here and soften up that, right? Because that's a slightly light area. So I can block wet to wet, but then later I can go back in with the dry brush to soften up those sharp margins that you see there, see that? With the dry brush, I can mend it. Basically, I can soften it down a little bit, but it will keep moving. But I can mend it to create a more gradual transition with the dry brush, right? Soften it, right? Doing a lot of softening, blending, and paying attention to the dilution with this copy here. So it's pretty good for your health, watercolor health.